Everyone loves a good mystery, and in my opinion, there's no greater mystery than a history mystery, which is also really fun to say. Unearthing the tomb of King Tutankhamun may be one of the greatest history mysteries of all. Not because he was one of Egypt's greatest rulers, it was actually quite the opposite. King Tut was basically a king in name only. He came into power at 9 years old and was riddled with physical deformities. Plus, much of the actual business of ruling was done by a Jafar-type character named Grand Vizier I. On top of that, Tut's father was one of the most hated rulers in Egypt's history. His successors, including his son, criticized his rule so fiercely much was done to erase him from Egyptian history. And years later, King Tut was brutally, but hilariously, mocked on SNL by Steve Martin.
Got a condo made of stoner.
This guy can't catch a break. Given the insignificance of his rule, along with Tut Sr.'s complicated history, the boy king was nearly forgotten. This sounds bad, but it actually ended up being the main reason he's the only Egyptian pharaoh people nowadays can name. Grave robbers raided many of the tombs of the more well-known pharaohs. Since few people knew of Tut's final resting place until the early 1900s, Tut's mausoleum remained completely preserved and intact. We talked a little about the scarabs in the previous episode on King Tut, but this little beetle is so prevalent it warrants revisiting. A scarab is more commonly known as a dung beetle. These little dudes were really important to the ancient Egyptians. In ancient Egyptian religion, the sun god Ra is seen rolling across the sky each day. Similarly, the scarab beetle rolls its poop across the ground into a ball in order to feed its babies. You know, in retrospect, this seems like a bit of a stretch, but who am I to judge? Regardless, the ancient Egyptians viewed these insects as symbols of the heavenly cycle and rebirth. So to honor them, they were constantly represented in Egyptian jewelry, and Tut's tomb is no exception. We talked about the beetle made from a tektite called Libyan desert glass in our previous episode, a piece so fascinating I wanted to show it to you again. As you remember, the glass was made from a meteor striking the desert sand nearly 30 million years ago. This piece is hardly the only beetle featured in this collection. There are a few scarabs made from lapis lazuli, a very important stone to the ancient Egyptians. These folks believe that lapis would bring great fortune to its owner and is commonly associated with many of Egypt's wealthiest inhabitants. Lapis is featured in King Tut's death mask, many of the ornate staffs, and quite a few of the bracelets, breastplates, and other adornments found in the famous crypt, many of which were formed into our little scarab friends we discussed a bit ago. Red jasper is another stone that carried significance to the ancient Egyptians. They believed jasper contained healing powers. Given King Tut's preponderance to illness, it makes sense that this beautiful red rock would be commonly used in his jewelry. It was also thought to give its wearer a safe trip to the afterlife. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. Then there's the famous pectoral breastplate that heavily features jasper. You can see a vulture and a cobra, a jasper inlay, and quite a few bracelets and necklaces found in the ancient crypt heavily feature the opaque chalcedony. In 2019, a 9-year restoration project concluded restoring Tut's tomb to its former glory, and conservationists are currently working on the gold layers that encase Tut's sarcophagus. So if you find yourself in the Luxor area, be sure to check it out. Oh, and also, sorry to disappoint any 90s kids out there, but King Tut's cobra staff isn't a real thing.
Yes, it's open! He got King Tut's cobra staff!
And if you're not familiar with the deep cut from Legends of the Hidden Temple,
Legends of the Hidden Temple.
Sorry that you just discovered the possibility of its existence only to be let down. Have you been lost to history for thousands of years? Tell us about your plight in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. For more information on the gemstones and artifacts we discussed today, check out the links below. Thanks for watching.